Today's guest has one of the most compelling stories I have ever heard. After he finished a cycling trek through the United States with 9 teenagers, his life was changed in an instant when a car accident by a drunk driver left him a paraplegic. He's used all the lessons that he got from that, and he is now the founder of Zen Warrior Training, the warrior himself, Sam Morris. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for inviting me.
You know, I was thinking about it this morning. I was a little nervous, and I was like, you know what's so crazy? Like, I've met a lot of celebrities and a lot of successful people and powerful people, but nothing gets me more excited and honored than to be in the presence of somebody like you.
Oh, thank you.
Seriously.
Thank you.
To be handed so many obstacles and choose to thrive despite them is, I think, the biggest testament of one's character and like the epitome of everything.
Thank you. Well, there it is. It's a choice. It's always a choice. It's like, are you going to just accept life circumstances for what happens to you at face value, or are you going to make a choice to be empowered? And that's a choice that I'm making all the time, every single day.
Yes.
And then I'm teaching other people how to do the same.
Which I absolutely love and I want to get into, but I want you to take me back to, I read that you had studied Buddhism, is that right? Like in the 90s, that kind of planted the seed a little bit?
Yeah, you know, what initially planted the seed, and I love that I can actually talk about this now because it's actually becoming sort of mainstream, is back in the middle of high school when I was about 16 years old, I started taking psychedelics like mushrooms and LSD and so forth. And I started to have these incredible expansive experiences where I realized that I was not the ego that I thought that I was, that who I was really just pure awareness. And it was this profound insight to be getting at the age of 16, and I really didn't know what to do with that.
I didn't have that acid trip, by the way. I really had that. I wish I had that one.
But later on in college, in 1998, I discovered Buddhist teachings, and I started taking some classes in Buddhism and realized, lo and behold, that what they were describing, what the Buddhist teachings were describing, was completely in sync with the intuitive realizations that I had had through this mental expansion that I had done. And it was all around how the things that we cling to in life, the things that are impermanent that we cling to for security, are actually the very things that cause us suffering in life. And so that really resonated. I was like, yes, that's exactly it. People are clinging to impermanent things, and that's why they are most challenged, is they want to make something permanent so that they'll feel secure, but they can't. And so somewhere their minds know that they can't actually take this thing and be secure. So then in 1999, as you said, I led a bicycling trip for 9 teenagers across the US. And I was a really avid athlete, and we did an unassisted cycling tour, which was like 3,800 miles.
Wow.
And in the winter, I skied, and I was like an avid skier and snowboarder, and I used to run up mountains, like hiking, just run up and down mountains. And so then one night in November of '99, I got into this car driven by a drunk driver, and he went off the road and hit a tree. And when that happened,
so you were with?
I was riding in the back seat. Yeah, I was on the.
And what happened to him?
He was fine. I mean, he went to jail for a little while and that kind of thing, but.
Did you forgive him?
I did. You know, I would say the majority of my forgiveness was right off the bat as soon as I first saw him after the injury happened. And it really wasn't for his sake, it was for my sake. It was like I needed to at least like release that, because the trauma was so severe that I knew that if I was hanging on to resentment towards him, it was just going to eat me alive, and I wasn't going to be able to heal the way that I knew that I needed to heal. So I remember actually the moment when I was forgiving him, because I was still in the hospital. It was about 5 days after the accident. He came into the hospital to see me, and the nurses had like blood pressure monitor and a heart rate monitor on me and stuff. and my heart rate was something like 220 beats per minute because I was so,
Fired.
there was just so much emotion combined with morphine and like this whole like, oh my God. So,
Well, I think that that's so profound, though. I mean, I think it's so obvious the physical healing that needs to happen, but spiritually, I mean, just forgiveness in itself is so healing, and it's probably, for me personally, one of my most difficult practices, but I'm getting better at it, at forgiving, and it's so vital for everything in life and healing process.
Yes, absolutely. You know, the hardest thing for me, which was something I didn't realize until like 15, 16 years later, was that I hadn't really truly forgiven myself.
Oh, it's...
It was like easier to forgive him because that's like, oh, okay, you know, like, all right, I'm going to forgive him because I don't want to deal with resentment. Not realizing that that for years and years and years I was holding on to this resentment towards myself for even being like what in my mind was like stupid enough to get into that car that night.
Right.
But you know, everything happens for a reason if you make that choice. And that's the power of our will. You know, people say, well, you know, did this happen for a reason? And I don't believe that it's just like the universe saying, okay, well, this is the karmic path that I have set out for you, and fate is predetermined and all of that. I believe that it's total free will that chooses the reasons why things happen. And so I just keep on making that choice all the time when things, and you know, I continue to deal with really challenging circumstances resulting from my injury, even 19 years after. But I keep making that choice and looking at, all right, well, what's this teaching me right now? What's there to get out of this? How can I become more self-actualized as a human being through this experience?
I think that's so important because I think people think, you know, someday they're just going to wake up and all these problems are going to go away. You're going to be to an enlightened state where things aren't going to bother you. And I think the fact that it's a constant choice. And I think maybe for somebody like you or anybody dealing with an ailment or a disability, it grounds you even more into your body, I feel like, because it's a constant reminder.
Exactly.
It's the constant
moment
teacher.
by moment, constant. Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, a lot of people have everyone has challenges, and a lot of people have very severe challenges, but they can often kind of swerve around them, like kind of navigate around, like, well, I'm just going to go out and drink tonight. I'm just going to let myself like blow off all this energy, or I'm just going to break up with this person and never see them again, and or I'm just going to, you know, quit this job that I hate and start a new job and so forth. But those are all ways of kind of avoiding what there actually is to learn from the experience. It's like, well, if I just get drunk, or if I just break up with this person, or if I just quit this job, then I'll feel okay. And then I won't actually have to face the fact that I attracted this in the first place. Whereas if you're in a constant constant situation that I've been in, you have to, like you were just saying, you just said that perfectly, you have to keep making that choice moment by moment by moment.
And what you said before we started filming was so beautiful, and it just tugged at my heartstrings, where you said, the lessons that you've learned, obviously, through this experience, and I think it planted the foundation for your life's work, which you're going to tell us about. But you wish people the lessons that you learned from this. I forgot exactly what you said. It was so eloquent and beautiful.
Thank you. My situation with physical paralysis has really made me aware of how everyone suffers from some kind of a paralysis in their lives. And it's, you know, going through this and having gone through everything that I've been through, I can see, oh wow, they paralyze themselves in this way. They paralyze themselves in this way. They paralyze themselves in this way. So it might not be as extreme as physical paralysis, but paralysis is paralysis. Like what this is just a lack of physical sensation and function in my lower body. But paralysis is actually a mental state. It's a mental and emotional state as opposed to really a physical state.
Yeah.
Like this without any kind of attachment is just what it is. It's just a lack of function. And technically, from a medical standpoint, it's paralysis, but this paralysis can't stop me. The only paralysis that could potentially stop me would be mental and emotional paralysis. Yeah.
I love that. I love we talk a lot about non-attachment in yoga. I'm a yoga teacher, and I love that seems like a big theory for you, is how the attachment is what causes the suffering.
Yeah.
And you've said, I've read some things that you've said, and some of the things that you've said is so beautiful, how you
Please
said
tell me, what have I said?
Yeah, you said, hang on a second. Well, you said everything that I've been through was setting the foundation for my life's work.
Yes.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's like, wow.
Yeah.
You know, it's so amazing.
I had that wake-up call back in 2013 because over the course of the years, I'd have friends and acquaintances tell me, man, like, you've been through some serious stuff in your life, like some serious challenges. And every time I'm going through a challenge of my own, I always think about you. And I used to just kind of take that as a compliment and be like, oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that, you know. But at a certain point, I realized, sort of a light went off, and I realized, oh, so what I'm doing is actually helping other people. The way that I'm living, my attitude towards life, my perspective on life is actually assisting other people through their own challenges. And it was just this kind of wake-up call where I realized, oh, this is my life's work. This is what I'm here to do.
And that's when Zen Warrior Training was birthed.
That's right. Zen Warrior Training was birthed.
And so what is Zen Warrior Training?
So with Zen Warrior Training, it's a body, mind, soul balancing coaching program where I help people to really tap in to the power of their creational force inside of them, their spirit, their soul, whatever you want to call it, and to learn how to tap into that consistently so that they can override the tendencies of the mind to create those types of paralysis. And that paralysis might be like getting hung up on some kind of situation that happened in the past, or that paralysis might be a concern about some kind of hypothetical situation that's going to happen in the future. So my job is to help people to become as present as possible through a body, mind, soul centering process. I utilize breath as a modality.
I was just going to ask you that because that's so interesting.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Breath is the most powerful tool that we have, and it's right here, literally underneath our noses. And most people don't know how to use it for what its potential actually is. I've got an interesting story about breath too that's really profound, if we have time to share.
Yeah, tell me, let's hear it.
So a week after my accident happened, I'm in this hospital bed, and my lower body's paralyzed, my upper body's in this hard shell plastic cast called a thoracic lumbar support orthotic, and I'm just like...
Did you know what was going on? Or,
yeah,
you knew.
Oh yeah, I definitely knew. However, for the first week, like basically as soon as I got into the hospital, they started pumping me full of morphine. And so that lasted for a week. And I thought, oh, well, all right, well, this sucks, but I seem to be doing okay. Well, what I didn't realize was that it was the morphine that
Just
made me
numbing
feel like I was
everything.
doing okay. Yeah. So on day 7, they take me off of morphine, and I'm just left there in my own thoughts in the middle of the night in this hospital bed going, oh my God. And I was not afraid to die, but I was terrified to live. Like the idea of living with paralysis was like, I was only 24 years old. I was like, oh my God, how can I do this? And so if I had had a sharp object around within arm's reach, I don't know if I would still be here today.
Do they offer at the hospital, like somebody
Knives?
to come in? No, oh my gosh, no.
Razor blades.
Do they offer support in any way? Because I can't imagine somebody that didn't have, I mean, the seeds that you had of Buddhism and like you had this conscious state eventually
Right.
that got you to where you are. But I mean, I can't imagine if somebody didn't have those tools in their toolbox
Totally.
to go back to.
They offer support in rehab, but during that first week, I don't think I had any type of emotional support whatsoever. So I basically had to figure it out for myself in that moment. And so as I was lying there in this hospital bed, suddenly the onslaught of anxiety was beyond anything I could possibly imagine. It was like, oh my God, I can't do this. I cannot do this.
I get goosebumps. I can feel it. I could feel it.
So crazy. And I had started practicing yoga a little bit before my injury happened. And I just had this like thought in my head that kept on saying like something along the lines of like, you should do yoga right now. And I'm like, why am I even having that thought? Like, how could I possibly do yoga right now? And then I had another thought that was the most powerful part of yoga is the breath. You can still breathe. So I was like, okay. So I started taking some deep breaths. And a few minutes into doing this deep breathing, suddenly something that was so profound happened, and I will remember this for the rest of my life and maybe beyond, because what happened was I hit some kind of a threshold, and I went past the threshold. And that threshold on one side had everything that I had ever known about myself or thought that I knew about myself, everything that I ever identified with. My body, my mind, my personality, my interests, all of the things that I identified with were on one side of that threshold. On the other side of that threshold, there was nothing. It was just pure awareness. So I became aware that I was not this body, and I was not this mind, and I was not this personality, that all of those things were projections of my ego, but they weren't who I actually was. I realized that who I actually was pure consciousness. And I realized that every single person in the world is just pure consciousness thinking that they're a person.
That's like samadhi, an enlightened state.
Yeah.
But I think because you took that experience, which sounds like probably one of the most horrible experiences, and you shifted it.
Yeah, and it had to include the breath.
The breath.
It had to include the breath. Like when that happened, as that happened, the other thing that happened physically was I could no longer feel my inhale or my exhale. Like all I was breath. I felt like I was breath and awareness. And I got this powerful hit that just said, breath is spirit. And you are in a state of spirit right now. And when that happened, I realized that even this lifetime, this body, this mind, this personality are all like a tiny blip on the overall spectrum of my conscious journey through lifetimes and lifetimes of being whatever we are. Being a spirit, being a soul, whatever.
Zen Warrior.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
And so the majority of the shift happened all in a couple of hours. Now, that's not to say that my healing was like done at that point. It was just beginning. But from that point on, I had a new perspective on my journey where I realized, hey, none of this stuff is personal. None of this is personal. This is just your ride.
Now, if we can all learn those lessons,
Yeah.
like now.
Totally.
Right now.
I really feel like this is the most
know.
important thing that we can possibly learn, which is why I do the work that I do, is my feeling is presence is the education of the future. Connecting to who we really are is the education of the future. From there, anything is possible.
I love that.
Because we're not in a mental construct of who we are. We're actually who we are actually in ourselves.
Which we're usually not. We're usually in like a future projection, which creates anxiety, or we're in the past and,
Exactly.
not here.
Exactly. I just heard a good quote yesterday from the author Michael Pollan. who, I'll just paraphrase what he was saying, basically like anxiety and depression are essentially kind of exist on the same continuum. Anxiety is regret about the past, and depression is regret about the past, and anxiety is regret about the future.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I agree about the breath work too. It's interesting. I've been practicing yoga 20 years, but I found the breath work first in the yoga book that I was gifted when I was 18, and I was dealing with anxiety. And I started doing, pranayama and breathing techniques that just shifted my entire life.
Incredible.
Because I was never taught to breathe. I was a ballerina, and I tell people this, I think about it, you're never taught to breathe. I mean, it's crazy.
It's amazing.
We're never taught to breathe.
It's amazing that as ballerinas of all things, you'd still not be taught to breathe.
You're not taught to breathe.
Incredible.
Yeah. Obviously, it's voluntary, but when you bring conscious awareness to the breath, obviously, you know what happens. It totally shifts.
It's a totally different experience.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I always ask my guests, and you've already shared so many golden nuggets, as I say, of wisdom, but I want to ask you if there's one thing that you could pinpoint that has helped you thrive through all of your challenges, what would be your golden secret?
Well, the golden secret is that through connecting with your breath and with your body, and through cultivating your witness consciousness, in other words, your ability to notice yourself have thoughts and have feelings, but not follow the thoughts and not follow the feelings if they're not helping you. Through cultivating that ability, like your life just expands so much naturally, because most of the time we are sort of going back and forth between thoughts and feelings and emotions and so forth.
I call it the monkey brain.
The monkey brain, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Most of the time we are stuck in monkey brain, and it's very limiting. People experience, not only depression and anxiety, but if they don't experience those types of things, they often just kind of feel exhausted at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Not because they're physically exhausted, but because their minds have been doing so many things that they didn't choose all day long. And so by connecting to yourself in this way, this is my golden nugget, by connecting to your breath and your body and developing your witness consciousness, you can have stable, sustainable energy all day long and be living your truth, as opposed to living from the projections of your mind or from the emotions that you feel.
Living your truth. That's amazing. Thank you so much for coming today. It was such an honor.
Thank you for inviting me.
Can't wait to see everything that you're going to do.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jesse.
Yay, thank you.